Hi, I'm Casey. I'm a professor. And also 2 months ago, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Usually, I post videos about my research and academic advice, but November 14th is World Diabetes Awareness Day. And I personally have gotten so much value out of the community of people with diabetes on YouTube. But I wanted to make a video about this in hopes that it might help some other people, and also because I know so many academics with chronic illnesses, and I also think that this is something that we should be talking about in terms of people who are in graduate school or other parts of academia. So you might be thinking, Casey, you're pretty old. Isn't type 1 the kind of diabetes that you get when you're a kid? And the answer is yes, it usually is. If you do not know that people can still be diagnosed with this illness in their 30s, you are not alone. In fact, I did not know that myself. But one of the reasons that I wanted to make this video is that from what I've heard and also my own experience, I think that a lot of people my age are actually being misdiagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So there are other videos and resources that could explain this in much more detail and much better than I could, but very briefly, this is a pancreas. Your pancreas produces insulin. Insulin is very important because it regulates blood sugar. And if you don't have enough insulin, or if it's not working properly, glucose, sugar, builds up in your blood. And that is very, very dangerous. So if you have a normal pancreas, a happy little pancreas, whenever you eat food that breaks down into glucose, which is, by the way, a lot of food. In fact, even protein can eventually break down into glucose. But definitely carbohydrates, which doesn't just mean sugar. It also means pasta and rice and bread. So if you have a normal pancreas, when you eat those things, it knows just how much insulin to release to keep your blood sugar at a normal range. So if you have type 2 diabetes, it means that you have become insulin resistant. It turns out that I actually have type 1 diabetes. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease, not caused by anything. It has nothing to do with how much sugar I ate or didn't eat. It means that you have antibodies that are attacking cells in your pancreas that produce insulin. So the way that you confirm what type of diabetes you have is to do 2 types of tests. One tests for how much insulin your pancreas is producing, and one tests for whether you have those antibodies that could be attacking your pancreas. My test results were, yeah, you've got basically no insulin, and yes, there are antibodies, which was a huge shock to me, in part because I'm, in my late 30s. When people my age are diagnosed, sometimes the term is latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. Basically, it means you get type 1 when you're old. The good news is this diagnosis meant that I could get the correct treatment, but this actually brings me to the next thing that I think it's really important to understand, which is how much this affects lots of decisions in your everyday life. I think this is the thing that has really floored me more than anything else over the past just few months of dealing with this. But I have to think about things like, how much insulin do I need to take to cover this meal? And I have to think about when I'm going to take it in relation, because if I take insulin and then don't eat soon enough, my blood sugar could drop too low, which is quite dangerous. If I eat too quickly after I take it, it doesn't have time to kick in, and then I get a big spike. If I take enough to cover a meal and then I don't eat it all, my blood sugar could also drop too low. I've definitely also had some times where I underestimated how many carbohydrates were in something and I got a huge spike. And if it gets high enough, you actually feel quite ill too. If you've heard about how diabetics will carry around juice boxes, etc., the reason for that is that if your blood sugar gets too low, it's very dangerous. And so you want to then eat some fast-acting carbs. Juice is very good for this. I also have these glucose tablets that I carry in my purse. Something like Skittles can also work very well for this. But basically, if your blood sugar gets too high, that's bad. You need more insulin. If your blood sugar gets too low, that's bad. You need more carbs. But being low is the more immediate problem. Now, if this sounds very complicated, it's even worse if you're relying on checking your blood sugar manually. However, now I have a continuous blood glucose monitor. This means that I have a device that is checking my blood sugar with a small needle underneath my skin about every 5 minutes, and it sends the reading to my phone so I can see a graph that looks like this that shows me what my blood sugar is constantly. And I can see how it changes in reaction to insulin and to food. So this thing, my dexcom, is just sitting there on my arm, reading my blood sugar every 5 minutes and giving me the most valuable data that I could have right now. Having this constant data is really hugely beneficial. It's basically allowed me to constantly run experiments on myself.
So, the other reason that this data is so important is because even though I've mentioned the way that you have to take insulin to cover carbs, etc., you actually need insulin just to generally live if you're not making any at all. And so, in addition to the insulin that I take with meals, I also have a basal insulin, which is releasing in my body throughout the day. So, type 1 diabetes can't actually be cured by not eating. And yeah, experimenting on myself.
And the amount of work that is going into this, the small decisions that I'm making constantly, and even the amount of math that I'm doing really, really makes me admire young people who are dealing with this illness. I can't even imagine the level of maturity that a 10-year-old must have in order to manage this illness, even with the help of their parents. I've been hanging out in some really great diabetes support groups, and if anyone is watching this and you are the parent of a diabetic child, you're amazing. So as I said, I have gotten so much value out of the community of people on YouTube, type 1 diabetics sharing their stories and tips and lives with YouTube. So this isn't going to become a diabetes-focused YouTube channel. However, if you are someone with diabetes and like to see someone like you just living their life, then feel free to subscribe. I will probably make some more videos about this, particularly things around diabetes and data and technology, because of course that's what I do in my day job. I'm an information scientist and a human-computer interaction researcher, and I am very interested in things like the usability of insulin pumps and data privacy when it comes to all of this data that we're creating as part of this illness. Also, to be clear, I am in a very fortunate, privileged position. As long as I am paying very close attention, trying to keep my blood sugar under very tight control, I do not have to worry constantly about complications. So this, as a type of illness to deal with as an academic, is very different than, for example, if you have chronic fatigue or chronic pain. But I do think that this is something that we should be talking more about, particularly when it comes to graduate students. And if you're watching this because you too are diabetic, go you! I am impressed with everyone who has dealt with this for much, much longer than I have, particularly for people who started dealing with it at a very young age. And if you have watched this and didn't know much about diabetes before, I really hope that you have learned something. I mean, the first time that I probably ever heard of diabetes was Stacy in the Babysitter's Club. I really loved those books. And now in the new Netflix series, she has a bedazzled insulin pump, which is pretty awesome. If you know someone who has this condition, maybe reach out during the month of November and tell them how impressed you are with how much work they have to do every day to keep themselves alive. Also, I hope that your pancreas stays in tip-top condition. So happy Diabetes Awareness Month. I'm Casey. Thanks for watching. It also happens that I'm filming this on a day when I need to change my dexcom sensor. So I have to do that every 10 days. Sometimes they don't even last quite that long, but you know. So I've already taken the one that I had off, and the transmitter comes off of it. As you can see, I have some stickers on mine. I've gotten bling for my Dexcom from a place called Pump Peels. I'll link to that down in the description below, but I decided to do Pac-Man. So I took off the old one, pulled the transmitter out. So the transmitter you only replace, I think, every 3 months. So this is the one that I've had since the beginning. And now I get to put in a new sensor. So it turns out that diabetes causes a lot of waste. It is not a very environmentally friendly disease. And one of those problems is this thing. So this is the applicator, a new one of these things thrown in the trash every 10 days. So yeah, not great. But nothing I can do about it. All right, so this thing is gonna pop that sensor with a needle right into my skin. It's actually very painless, and I've heard this as well from parents who have children with type 1 diabetes, that it's actually not too bad. I've also got my phone here so that I can pair it with the new sensor. I've also got an alcohol swab here. I'm going to put it right here. So I'm going to wipe down that spot with alcohol. All right, so it just goes boop, right on there like that. Press the button. Doesn't hurt at all. And now, see, it's right on there. And then we're gonna pop the transmitter back in. Now that's on there. So the stickers are optional. I actually haven't had a problem personally with this falling off, but I think especially if it's gonna be on my arm, I want it to look nice. Very small silver lining of diabetes swag. All right, there we go. All done. And now I'm ready to chomp some fruits with my Pac-Man. And actually now I have to wait 2 hours for this thing to warm up. So I'm not going to be getting any readings for 2 whole hours. Usually when this happens, or sometimes when the sensor fails and it just stops working, I will make sure to check my blood sugar manually with a finger prick. So that's that. Now I have a new sensor, and now I'm gonna have data.